What is up, everybody? This is Recap Rewind Recon. I'm JLag.
And I'm NB, and we are counting down our top 10 moments of all time in Game of Thrones history.
Seasons 1 to 7. Our number 10 spot goes to Littlefinger, causing basically everything.
Yeah, so just getting into like who the F is Littlefinger. I think he starts out mainly owning brothels in King's Landing. And then from there, he like weasels his way into like Robert Baratheon's like inner council circle. And then like he's doing all the money and so we eventually do find out that like later on way later once like he's like married Lysa and like he's killed her, right
and then it also turns out that Lady Lysa and him are the ones that plotted to kill Jon Arryn in the first place.
So the murder, I think, of Jon Arryn really kind of triggers everything, right? Because then when Jon Arryn dies, Ed Stark has to go to King's Landing, then he goes to King's Landing, and then it was like a shit show after that, right? So
exactly.
Him and Lysa basically like planned all of this, and really he manipulated Lysa as well. He was just using her.
Oh,
right?
For sure. Yeah, but like it was a crazy moment. I think when he exposes it, I think he tells Sansa the truth, and because he like basically like says that he loves her, and he's like, this is what I'm doing, and she protects him in that moment because she needs to stay alive. But later on, I think she like is able to expose
and like
him.
The weird part too, I think, like we were mentioning with him and Sansa, like as he's teaching her things too, I think he's also exposing who he is and like all the things that he's done. And it was almost like he was like trying to like show off to her to be like, this is what I did, this is where I started, and like this is where I ended up, like see, I'm gonna make it to the Iron Throne. Like it was almost like at that point he was like showing off a little bit to her, and she was like, bitch,
that was his big downfall. For sure.
Exactly.
I think that he like got ahead of his emotions. He's like, oh, I got this new girl, she's like into me, here's all my like stories, and then she's like, no bitch, I love my family, you're gonna die now.
And then the final episode of season 7 ends off with like her making the decision to kill him in front of like everyone at Winterfell.
Right. And like it's funny because we think that she's gonna go kill Arya, but then it all turns around, and it's really because Bran is the one that tells everybody what happened, right? Because he's also the one that gave he's the one that tried to kill Bran in the first place, and then also blamed that on the Lannisters.
With the
so there's
dagger.
A lot of different things that he did to like start this war between the Lannisters.
Yeah, basically
and the
like
Starks.
Season 1 I feel like was all him. Like he was a trigger
100%.
point to all of these different things happening.
He's the one that basically started the entire show. Thanks, Littlefinger, but also like
boy, bye.
I hate you.
Yeah. Our 9th spot's gonna go to Ned's death, just because like it's heartbreaking, and it's like really what like Littlefinger definitely was a trigger to all of this, but like Ned's death was the unraveling for the Stark children, and like it just became so much worse for them after that.
I think even just beyond the fact that it was a big moment for the Stark family, it was like a huge moment for television.
Yes.
I've never seen a character who you think is the main character. Like, we start off with the Stark family, we see Ned and his whole family, and then for him to die the way that he died, I was like, this is not the same show that I've been watching all my life. Like, this is so different.
Yeah, it definitely flipped the switch on what TV can be, because you're right. Like, usually, like, they start off these shows with like these amazing actors who like stick around for the whole show, and like they're the hero of the show. But that's not what they did with him. They were like, here's this amazing actor who's playing this character. Well, say bye to him because he's dead. And it was just how the F is this show going to continue without him? But of course, little did we know, like that was just the beginning to all of the rest of everything, basically.
Like, and all the deaths that kept happening after that. Like, that's the thing too. Like, he definitely set a precedent that no one is safe in Game of Thrones. Like, everyone's gonna die at some point.
And I think too, I think a big part of his death, and this is what's so amazing about this show, because for me, when I saw him die, it was like, oh my god, like poor Ned, like damn, like what bad luck. But then when you start really watching the seasons and you start like becoming a part of the show, you're like, wait, he did fuck up really bad, and everything he did was his fault. Like, he got killed because of himself. Like, he messed up way too many times, he asked too many questions, he didn't play the game properly, and Cersei saw him as a threat, and she was like, bye.
He was being too like noble in this world where people were like backstabbing and stuff, and his honor couldn't hold up in the world. So he did. But yeah, it was crazy. It was like definitely one of the biggest moments of the show. And the saddest thing is like all the kids saw it. Like Sansa saw it, Arya saw it, and that also is one of the big things that drives both of those characters forward too, right?
Yeah, it
like,
was
not only just Rob going and starting this war, it was also Arya like starting this whole mental change to be like, I'm gonna get revenge on all these people who wronged my family.
You know what? It's so funny that you're saying that, and I'm getting major goosebumps right now because I just watched the finale again, and there's a moment in the finale where Sansa and Arya are talking at Winterfell and it starts snowing, and they look at each other and they're like,
and the snows fall and the white winds blow. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives.
I miss him.
Me too.
and you saying that they were the only ones who saw that moment when they kill him, it's like it brings it all back together. Like, I'm getting fucking chills right now. This is so crazy. Yeah, like it's so much more emotional because they were the only ones that saw him.
They were the last ones to see him alive.
Yeah, that moment kills me. That moment, like, I was like, like, it's really sad.
All right, we're gonna move to number 8, and it's gonna be Jaime Lannister getting his freaking hand chopped off.
Crazy. This was one of the moments where, so I've read the books, so I knew what was coming, right? But it was one of those moments where I still was shook. Like, I was still like, oh my God.
I mean, we watched it together, and I think you knew it was going to happen at the end of the episode. And you kept, like, looking at me, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then when it happened, I was like, what the hell's happening?
So I think, and I think one of the biggest parts of this is really, you know, turning Jaime Lannister's character upside down, and where he starts as like this hero of like the, you know, the Lord's like whatever protector, and like he's the like strongest knight there is, and like, you know, the golden boy. And he gets captured by Rob's army. I think that's kind of what sort of starts this process. And then Catelyn, whatever, like she like sends him off. She releases him. And then through his journey, I think, back to King's Landing, him and Brienne get captured
by the Bolton family, which is technically Robb Stark's like crew, but also like there was the Red Wedding. So
at this point they're like working together, but whatever. So they see, I think he says, he's like, I'm Jaime Lannister, like I have money, I can pay you, and the guy's like, I don't care about any of that, like you're just like a spoiled little bitch. And I think the fact that he chopped his hand off is worse than death.
Oh yeah, for sure. For him, who like is a knight and needs both of his hands to like wield his sword, like it's who he is, it's what his like it's literally who he is, and it's as like, a person.
It's so weird. Like in so many ways, Game of Thrones has like tested men and like tested their manhood. And for him, it wasn't so much of his like dick. It was like his fighting hand. Like that to him was everything, and everything that he stood for. It was in that one like part of his body. So like for that to be gone, that just, you know, set his character off. And like I personally loved his character after that. Like it changed everything.
Yeah, because I think he had to decide whether or not to be defeated by his life and what came of it, and then like kind of come through. And he ended up, you know, like growing and like getting stronger, and then he learned to fight a little bit better, so he was able to come through it. But at the same time, it was a huge growing moment for him, a really humbling moment for him. I mean, I think he was still like a bit of a dick, like he still was, like the crusty, like, you know, Jaime Lannister that we know. He ends up going back to Cersei anyway.
Like he doesn't leave Cersei's side until the last episode of season 7. Like that's how long his loyalty, you know, stayed with her. But throughout that, he's tried to change. And like just real quickly, just to mention, like that moment when they get captured, they take Brienne to like take her, and like basically they're gonna rape her. And he looks at her with so much pity and like so much pain, and like, oh my God, like you poor woman, like they're gonna do this to you. But then when you leave that scene after they chop his hand off, like the tables like completely flips on him. And like all the pity was like on him, and he was just feeling so sorry for himself. Like it was just such a powerful moment, the fact that they chose to do that to his character, like to like chop off his hand. It was pretty crazy. In our 7th spot is the Sept blowing the F up.
Like what?
Like
what? Moment. Oh my God.
Might as well just blow up the whole town.
First of all, that episode was so well done. The way that the editing, intro played out. The editing was
amazing.
It was so good.
The music.
But everything, it was definitely a shocking moment. I didn't expect it whatsoever. And yeah, so it all starts off with Cersei just about to go on trial for her crimes against humanity or whatever, and everybody's waiting in the sept. They're all like waiting for her. So it's like literally like the entire town. Marjorie and her brother and like the dad, like it's the whole Tyrell family is there. The Sparrows are there. Everyone's
like
there.
Everyone of
for
high
her to show up.
society is basically there. So like all the judges, all those type of people are there inside the sept waiting for her to come through.
Right.
The way the episode is edited, you kind of know like where it's gonna go, right? Because you know the wildfire and all that kind of stuff. And even before that moment, like we know that there's like a big shipment of wildfire like sitting somewhere in King's Landing. So like, and they kept dropping it a couple of times. So like you're kind of waiting like, when are they gonna use it?
I think it's not even just that. It's like you had to pay like such close attention to those little moments, because I've watched it like quite a few times over, and it's so subtle and you don't notice unless you pay really close attention to these wildfire hidden whatever. Like you really, I really didn't expect it all to come to what it did, but yeah, all the clues were there. For sure.
So basically what happens is like first of all, the music was next level, and like your like anxiety is like peaking because everything is happening like really quickly. And then like Cersei's like not getting ready, like she's not gonna go to the sept, and then Marjorie,
she's like in her pajamas still.
She's like, basically. I'm chilling over here, and then Marjorie's like, wait, what's going on? Like and so people are starting to like get impatient and be like, where's this bitch? Like we're waiting, where is she? And Marjorie's like, she goes up to the High Sparrow, she's like, bro, like where is this woman? Like why isn't Tommen here either? Like what's going on? And he's like, no, he's like, we need to wait, we need to like, you know, like freaking bring her to justice. And he's like lit on his own power trip, and she's like, but wait, like what's going on? Like why aren't they here? He locks the door, which was so extra.
I know.
He, like,
I was like,
in.
did you really have to do that? Like what if anybody wanted to go for like a smoke break or
like
something?
to the bathroom? Exactly. So he locks them in, and literally like she walks back to like the where they were standing, and it's almost like her face, like she knew that they were gonna get fucked. Like she knew it.
She was like, we're gonna
like it was such a creepy
I think she even
moment.
she grabs her brother's hand, and she was like, we're gonna try, and then it didn't.
And then it literally just blows up.
I think that she wouldn't have been able to make it out anyway, because like literally it didn't even just blow up the sept, it blew up like the entire area around
like the streets
set.
and like the corners, and you're right, like it blew up that whole area.
Yeah, it was fucked.
It was just
like
crazy.
It was crazy because I was in such shock and disbelief. I'm like, no, Marjorie's still alive, right? Like she got out. Like no, she didn't.
Yeah, you know, she was I really loved her character, but I really don't think she could have gone past that. Like I couldn't have pictured it.
She just got like, it was just one of those things where you see a character and she's trying her best to like outsmart everybody, and then she just got outsmarted by like the smartest of them all. Like Cersei is a fucking wretched biatch, and only a psycho would think of that. So
and it's also important to note that the grandma wasn't there in that moment, because I do feel like if the grandma was there, something could have gone different maybe, or like she wouldn't have put them all into the sept at the same time. Like
Grandma Tyrell wouldn't have
been down for that shit. Like she wouldn't have been like there. So Cersei's literally like, her only answer to that was like, blow the shit up. Like that's it.
Yeah. She's like, do it now, bye.
And the High Sparrow, who was literally like a huge part of that entire season, he was like all up in everyone's business, he just like blows up, and that's the end of like the whole Sparrow like storyline.
That whole storyline is gone. It's like into smithereens in 5 seconds.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Which I was okay with.
Which I was, it's true.
And on top of that, like, not to like, just to quickly mention, like, it didn't even stop at that moment. Like, Tommen literally jumps off of his balcony as soon as it happens. Oh my god,
so bad.
So like, it's like,
it was like shock,
the deaths
shock.
just continue.
Yeah, and he literally
it's like
sees
1,000 plus 1.
Yeah, he literally sees the explosion. Like, how fucking heartbreaking for this kid. Like, he was legit in love with Marjorie. He's like, yes, I'm getting it in every night. Like, my life is amazing. And then he was just done.
Number 6 is going to the Red Wedding.
I mean, for eternity, the Red Wedding is going to be, you know, symbolic and like one of the craziest moments I think in TV history.
So let's break it down.
Quickly. Yeah. Again, I think it's one of those moments where you live it in the moment and you're so heartbroken and like you're crying for days and weeks. But then when you really start, you know, looking at it seasons later, you're like, oh my god, like Rob messed up so bad. Like he walked into like basically like his own death. He was an idiot.
Right.
So what happens is during his whole, I guess, like rebellion or like the war, Walder Frey like tells him like, yo, marry one of my daughters. I have like freaking like 60 daughters. He's like, marry one of them. And then he agrees. But then he meets like this next girl who like he totally falls in love with. He's like, I want this girl. So he marries her.
Yeah.
And then Walder Frey finds out, like, so he's so cheese. He's like, what the F? Like, you promised to like marry one of my daughters, whatever. And then I think it comes to a point where like on the map, Rob's army has to like go through Walder Frey's like kingdom area.
Yeah, for like a second.
Yeah, whatever. It's like go like faster somewhere. And then Walder Frey's like, well, you didn't marry one of my daughters. Like, why the F would I help you out? And he was like, fine, like take my uncle will marry one of your daughters then, right? And so Walder Frey's like, sick, we'll have a wedding at my house, like everyone come here. And your uncle what was his face? Edmure, he's like, he can marry one of my daughters. And Rob's like, cool, whatever. And at this point, Rob's wife is pregnant. Yeah. Right?
I think we find out like that episode. I was like, she's basically.
Yeah. So Catelyn Stark, like, the wifey with the baby, Robb Stark, Edmure, like the whole effing family is like going into this guy's castle, being all like lit like for a wedding, and then the wedding happens. I mean,
to their defense, like you don't do this.
It's
like,
true.
This is not something that happens.
In the folklore, in like the whole world of Game of Thrones, there's like this underlying agreement between all houses that like if you break bread, you can't fight, you can't kill someone in your house. Like as soon as you start eating, you can't do anything anymore. So even in the book, when I was reading this part in the book, like that was very apparent. It was like once we eat, we're good, we're safe. That's almost like how they saw it. I feel like whatever, the marriage happens, Edmure and like the girl like walk out of the room, people start like drinking and like eating, and then at one point like in the night somebody goes and closes the doors to like the hall.
Yeah, and then the Reigns of Castamere start playing and I'm like, oh no.
And then like Catelyn's like, what the fuck, like what's going on, like why is this music playing? And then Roose Bolton, the most depressing song. Roose Bolton, who's like Ramsay's dad, is like sitting right beside her, and she sees that he's wearing like that chainmail armor. She's like, what the fuck, like why would he be wearing this? And then I think right then like the whole orchestra stands up and they have like bows, right, like arrows,
right? Yeah.
And then Roose Bolton I think grabs her, or like
no, I think it's like Rob gets shot and then everybody gets shot and then she gets shot in the shoulder and then she falls and then Roose goes over to Rob because he's still standing and then he like stabs him and it's like, the Lannisters send their regards. Yeah.
And then at one point someone goes and stabs the effing baby, like her pregnant stomach.
I think that was like the first moment you see. Like first the shot goes into like Rob's arm, and then right after it's like this guy like just like violently stabbing this woman who's pregnant. And she's like, oh, like literally her face was like the worst. I was like, this is so fucking brutal.
Sad. And then Catelyn's like, she grabs I think one of the wives, but he has like 30 wives, so he doesn't even give a shit. She's like, I'm gonna kill your wife, and he's like, I don't care, like go ahead and kill her. And then she does kill her, and then someone else comes behind her and like slits her throat, and then she's dead.
It was honestly such a tragic moment. Like
too much. It was way too much stress. Like how do you watch that? Like there's like 5 characters dying in the matter of 5 seconds.
But then I've watched this show like 7 times over already, so I've watched this particular episode like with so much intent because I feel like I was so shocked the first time. As I watch it over and over again, it is still sad, but I think that you watch it and you're like, they were literally gonna die anyway. Like
it's true.
They even say in the war, like I think in the war tent, she says like, if we're gonna go down, we're gonna go down fighting. So she was already gonna start this, like they were both gonna go into this rebellion like thinking that they were gonna lose and die. Did they think that they were gonna like get like freaking ambushed and murdered? No, because I think even at one point Lannister, like I think it's Jaime, he says like, we saved so many people's lives because we didn't continue the war, we just ended it all there.
True.
And I'm like, I guess that's a way to look at it, but at the same time it was just so fucking brutal.
It was just brutal. And I think for me it's one of those moments where I wish I hadn't read the books. I wish that I didn't know what was coming, because this was the one moment where I was like, I wish I could have watched it like how everyone else took it in, like so effing shook, but I knew what was gonna happen. Obviously it was still shocking and it was still like crazy to watch. I knew at some point it was gonna come.
Even the writers and the creators of the show, this was the reason why they wanted to start the show in the first place. They were like,
why we want to write the show. Totally. And they knew, I think, that it was probably going to be in the 3rd season at some point. Like it can't happen too early on, right? So
oh man,
crazy.
And that's the thing, they spent like 2 seasons building up these characters only for them to all die in this moment. It was just like really tragic.
So going over to our 5th spot, we're gonna talk about Sansa and Jon finally reuniting at Winterfell. And it was really emotional, really beautiful. Like it was like emotional, but like so happy. And it made me just want a reunion with everyone really together. I'm like, I need this. I need to see like everyone coming back together. But
like just thinking about it gives me chills because
so break it down. Break that scene down for us. What happens?
So I believe that it's Sansa, and she just ran away from the phrase. No, sorry.
The Boltons.
It's Sansa, and she just runs away from the Boltons with Brienne's help as well as Theon's help. And so she finally gets to the wall. Is it the wall? Castle Black?
Castle Black.
And so she's like rolling in, and John's been waiting this whole time, and then like I think she turns and then she sees him, and they just like have this like intense hug moment, and it was like so satisfying. I think as a TV watcher, as a fan of the show, you know, you see her struggle for the entire time. You know that both these characters are in the north. You're afraid that Sansa's about to die. You're afraid that John's about to go to war and die. So you never think that they're gonna get that moment. And when they get the moment, like it literally like brings so much happiness, because especially like we've been talking about the Starks dying left, right, and center from the beginning of the show, like Ned dying, like Catelyn dying, the Red Wedding, like everybody died. So to see these two characters, the two Stark children, finally like after all these years just like see each other and like embrace each other, oh my god, it was like such a emotional moment for sure. I'm telling you, I'm getting chills as I talk. Like,
and it's crazy because I think Sansa and Jon were really like not the closest of siblings, so like the fact that it was so powerful, I was like, holy shit, like this is just the beginning of all these reunions. Like it's gonna get more emotional. For
sure. I love that even Sansa says it. She's like, imagine when Arya sees you, she's gonna fucking lose her mind. And I'm, oh god, it gives my stomach hurts. And it hasn't happened yet, right? That's gonna happen in the last season. Because I think the one thing that we have to stay true to and remember is the Stark family is like the heart of the show, really. You know, we started this whole show off with their lens, you know, like seeing the whole like King's like guard coming down like the path, coming to Winterfell. So to see these two children after all the tragedies that their family, like, you know, we're behind the Starks from the beginning, and to see these two characters get together is like very, very satisfying.
And they've made us wait this whole time, and that's one of the things that I think like is the hardest part. Like we're talking about years. Like for someone who's watching this show like last minute and they're catching up, like it's what, a couple of weeks, but we waited like 4 years in between, maybe even probably even longer, like 5 years in between like when they left Winterfell to like now that they're coming back. So like it's a long time.
Oh, it's crazy. I was so happy. I mean, that being said, they aren't like the best of friends as they like continue to get to know each other, but you know, he'd still lose her in charge of Winterfell. Number 4 is going to go to Arya losing her vision in season 5's finale.
Right. And this was one of the moments where I was like, OMG, how the F is she going to get through this one?
First of all, I thought it was going to be permanent. And I was like, we're going to have like, I mean, it's kind of cool if they end up making her this character that's like still an assassin, but is blind, like a Daredevil style thing. But it totally debilitated her.
Sure.
And she was not a good blind person.
And
for sure.
So basically what happens is, just to break it down for everyone, she arrives in Braavos, she escapes, you know, Westeros and whatever, so she comes across the water, she gets to Braavos, she goes to the House of Black and White, right? And through her training or whatever at the House in Black and White, she learns how to become an assassin, right? And this is essentially one of her powers, where like she can fight or she can kill, especially using like the faces.
But she wasn't supposed to be using the faces yet,
right?
Because she's still like in
she's
training.
Like in training, and like, you know, the number one rule is they assign who you're supposed to kill. Like you can't just go kill whoever the F you want to kill. But we know that she has her own list of revenge names, so like she's still on her separate mission, which I think made it even harder, because you do want her to like check these names off and get her revenge, but then also like you can't just like go and like, you know, do whatever the F you want to do. Like, you have to follow the rules as well. So I think what happens is, like, Marion Trent, who like was like one of the people on her list, like, he came to Bravos. She was like, sick, I'm gonna kill this guy. I'm gonna take one of the faces off the wall, and I'm gonna like sneak in to this like brothel, and I'm gonna kill him. And she does.
Yeah.
She kills the guy, checks him off her list. She comes back to like put the face, I guess, like back on the wall, right? And then what's his face? Jack and Hagar was like, yo, like, you fucked up. Like, we didn't tell you to kill this guy. You can't do this.
I think at one point he does say, like, only death can pay for life. Like, you had to pay back that debt with another life.
Right.
And it has to be your life.
Right. But he doesn't kill her. He just makes her blind.
Yes. And I don't know how it happens exactly. It's like some kind of magic, but he like kills himself, but it isn't himself. It's like, I don't know what
it was. Like the
It was
waif
like
girl,
this really weird
but
moment.
then it was like Arya at the end. Like, it was like different people in one person, and then like it was her with like without eyes. So I was like, okay, got it, cool.
Yeah, and then she goes blind.
Yeah.
And I think she's blind for like more than half of the next season.
Which in the end makes
but
her
then-
a stronger fighter. Like, she had to fight through it. She had to fight without her vision. So like, yeah, it does make her a better killer for sure, like a better assassin, sorry.
So yeah, it makes her a stronger fighter.
Yeah.
Now she's like pushing forward, and now she ends up like in Winterfell, so she becomes like the best assassin of all time.
Our third spot's gonna go to Hodor's origin story, specifically how he got his name.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it was crazy.
For one, like, I think it's just you learn about this character, and he's such a like third character. He doesn't have any lines. All he can say is Hodor. So you don't think anything of him. He's so like simple. All he does is take care of Bran. He's kind of goofy. He like, you don't know if he's like really intelligent or whatever, because you don't hear him say anything other than Hodor. So the entire time you're like, okay, cool, Hodor's around, like, that's nice, whatever. And then by the time it gets to the final like parts of his story, like, you're like, but like,
Yeah.
and everything just comes at you at the same time, and then it ends, and you're like, wait.
Yeah, you're right. Like, it was just hidden this whole time. You don't really think anything of him. Like, a part of me, I felt like, knew that it was gonna come to something. Like, we had to understand why the F he kept saying Hodor. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean? But I just didn't. I never thought it would be this part.
Like, that's the thing. To think that the writer thought about that from the very beginning when he wrote his character, I'm like, whoa, that is like quite a nested storyline to put in.
So
you
kind
know?
of like how it happens is like Bran is like north of the wall. They're kind of like doing their own mission, and they get stuck in this cave, and then all like the whites and the White Walkers like attack the cave. So like they have to like, they're trying to like get out, I guess.
So like he's downloading like all the information from the Three-Eyed Raven. So like they're both like in this like mode of like I guess they're in a memory, essentially. Both of them are in a memory, Bran and the Three-Eyed Raven.
Yeah.
And they're getting attacked. So slowly like all the White Walkers are coming, and so as he's downloading, everybody's fighting, and then you're watching, so like it's like present time and then like what's happening in the past. And we've seen Bran go into this like this kind of past moment like before, but he sees Winterfell, and he sees Winterfell like a long time ago. Like, he sees his dad as a young kid, he sees his aunt and his uncle, and then he sees like this kid in the corner, and it's a kid named Willis.
Yeah.
Is his name Willis?
Yeah.
And basically, you don't know who he is, you don't think anything of it, but I think Bran recognizes him, and he's like, oh my god, is that Hodor? Like, young Hodor? And so as it's happening, so like I said, it's like going back and forth between the present time and like the past time. And so I think it's like Mira is pulling the sled as Hodor's like helping to get down this like exit like passageway, and there's a secret door at the end of the passageway. So he opens a door, and as this is happening, goes back to the past, and the Three-Eyed Raven is trying to narrate the story, because he's like, this is your last memory that I'm going to give you. And Brandon's basically like, what's happening though? And then he starts to hear, Brandon starts to like break the, I guess, the chain, like he's breaking the link between like the real world and the past world. So as that's happening, I think Willis in the past sees Bran, and so he like has like an he has like a seizure, And as he's saying that, he hears what is being said in the present. I know it sounds confusing.
It's very confusing because the two worlds are basically, they're like parallel worlds. It's not really happening. It's not really the past, right? Because it's technically the past, but
it's like the present affected the past, like in a very direct way. And as he sees this, like, as he hears this voice, because Mira now is saying, like, make sure you hold the door, Hodor, like, just hold it. And she keeps yelling that. And as he hears that, that's when he has the seizure.
Yeah.
So,
and then
as that's all happening, he has a seizure, and all he keeps saying is hold the door, hold the door, hold the door. And then it turns into, as his seizure stops, it just becomes Hodor.
Yeah.
And then it shows him in the present holding the door, and then like it just has this whole, it's just such a crazy amazing
and
moment.
It's so beautiful. And so he holds the door, basically he's protecting Bran, like that's his final mission. It's like this final moment where he's trying to hold the door, and they escape, right? Like Bran gets out, they all leave, and he's sort of the last person there, and he's holding the door, but he just can't anymore because like they're all like behind him, like trying to like open the door, like all the whites and the White Walkers,
right?
And then he just dies, and that's how his story ends. Like they kill him.
It's a crazy moment. But the one thing that I will ask you now is, this is something that we haven't seen Bran do before, like affect the past that heavily. Like he literally basically created Hodor as the character. So do you think that this means that Bran has even more ability to go into the past and affect it?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think you do see certain times where he does things, even when Ned Stark is at the tower, where his sister is, where she has Jon. Like he was there in that moment too. It just wasn't as drastic as what we see with like Hodor. But I definitely think like the ability is there for sure. What I really want to know is, how did he get all these powers? Like, how does Bran have this ability? Like, was he always a three-eyed raven?
Yeah, I think he must have been like even more special. Yeah, he was the three-eyed raven from the get-go. Maybe he's the old man. I don't know. It's just like,
you know what I mean?
Confusing.
Like maybe he's that guy.
And clearly he's like wise beyond his years, but we'll see what happens with his character in the final season. Number 2 has to go to our man, aka our dragon,
Boy Dem
Viserion.
Yeah,
getting got by the Night King.
It was really sad. So Daenerys has 3 dragons: Viserion, Rhaegal, and Drogon.
And they're all named after like people. And like basically the men in her life.
Yeah, all the men. So Viserion was like her dumb brother who like killed, basically like Drogo killed him in the first season. Rhaegal is her older brother who she has never really met, but somehow feels a connection to him, and you know, he's been talked about as like this amazing fighter and like this warrior who was like amazing and like hot and like whatever. So she names one of the dragons after him.
And then Drogon is named after Drogo, Khal Drogo, her man.
Right.
So like she gets to
ride that one, and and no. So anyways, like this is really sad, but yeah, Viserion dies at the end of season 7, and it was just so freaking sad. And it kind of we said it, we're like, it must be coming. Like one of them has to be her, because she can't just go into the final season with 3 effing dragons. Like she's gonna win everything.
She already wins.
Yeah, like basically she wins. So like there had to have been a moment where like she's either handicapped or something happens to her. It was just the way that it happened, I think, was very like tragic, and like the Night King was just it was just so gross, so sad.
At first I didn't think that it was gonna be like this army of the dead that was gonna take over the dragons, especially in the beginning of the season when she attacks King's Landing, or she attacks the Lannister family, and what's his name, Bronn shoots Drogon in the shoulder. I was like, well, they're gonna die that way, like one of them's just gonna die during a war between 2 men. So to see this like dragon be taken down by the Night King, I was like, oh shit. And it just ups the stakes even more, because you're like it's like magic versus magic. So like obviously it makes a little bit more sense than just like a human trying to kill a dragon.
Yeah, totally. And I think the sad part was that like the dragons were never supposed to be there. Like she was really on a mission to help Jon.
Oh, that makes me so angry. Like, it was
never supposed to be that way, but she's like, okay, sick, I'm gonna go save this guy, like whatever, I'll take my 3 dragons. And then like she should have just taken 2 maybe, like, realistically.
Yeah.
But like, how does she know that like this guy's gonna have a spear and then there's like zombies? So
I mean, I have a lot of problems with the way that it all went down, because it was very cinematic for sure, and it was like a really well done episode. But like, just logistically, the way that like John ended up in the north in the first place, I was like, this was so pointless.
So
like, she could have just gone
stupid.
to the north and grabbed one of the
Yes.
White Walkers and then like come
this
back.
guy goes
'Cause,
to like the freaking northest point in the freaking universe, and then he's like, oh shit, like we're screwed now. Like, well, obviously.
Like, and on top of that, she thought that he dies. Like, she thinks that John dies during that moment. So like, she like loses everything. Like, she loses this guy that she liked, and she lost her like baby dragon, like everything. Like, it was really sad even just to watch her and her heartbreak through it, because like she says, like these dragons were her babies, like they were
For
her
sure.
children. She was never gonna bear children. So it's like literally seeing this like character, this person that you wanted in your life, like just die, and it was like such a tragic way to die.
And I think like seeing the dragon die was already sad enough, but then these motherfuckers go and like freaking like resurrect the dragon, and they're like, yo, we're gonna,
I know.
they make it into a zombie, and I'm like, what the F, like that's not your dragon. Like, you're cheating, you're not supposed to have a
You're
dragon.
cheating. It's not your dragon.
Yeah, like it was so messed up. And then like the dragon comes and like basically destroys the whole freaking wall. So I'm like, okay, sick. Like, you guys just cheated at this game.
It's so unfair, and it just so it'll be interesting to see what happens, because now it's like there's an ice dragon and there's 2 fire dragons, and on top of that, it's like it's like Drogon and Rhaegal's brother. So like, are they gonna even want to fight him?
And I think
know?
you made a really good point, because you said that like Viserion dying was almost symbolic at the fact that like her brother is dead as well. Like, he died early on
Yeah.
too, so like he's not a part of her journey. But having said that, now I'm thinking about it, and there was an interesting scene that happens when they come to King's Landing to like show Cersei like one of the White Walkers, and they kind of walk off to the side, like Jon and Daenerys, and she's like, I'm not gonna bear children, like these are my kids, like someone told me that like I can never have kids again. And he's like, who the F told you that? Like, that's not true. Like, and now I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, holy shit, like, were her dragons, you know, they were sort of like her babies, but like in the end they made her stronger. They gave her this platform to help her conquer the kingdom and whatever, but like maybe in the end like they're all gonna die, and like maybe she will end up having like legit babies of her own, you know?
Exactly.
Maybe they were
I
just
think
there to
that
like help her, and I'm like, now I'm like really sad.
It'll be really sad if they all die. It'll really, really suck.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling, and it's mostly because of the naming of the dragons. Like going back to what I was saying earlier with like Viserion dying. You know, Drogon is named after Drogo, and it'll be hard to see it for sure, because he's like obviously the favorite. Everybody loves him. All the fans
he's
love him.
the biggest one too, right? Like he's the
He's the biggest one. So if he dies, it makes sense, just like based on the fact that Drogo is also dead. But it also like symbolizes, I think, like letting go of her past,
Yes,
and like who she
totally.
was, to move forward. And it's really interesting too that now they have Rhaegal, who is now, we'll talk about it in our top 1, but Rhaegal is technically Jon's father, or Rhaegar, not Rhaegal.
You know, is Jon gonna be riding Rhaegar, and maybe she's gonna be like riding with him on Rhaegal, you know? So
No, I can definitely see
that would
like
be
both
crazy.
of them riding away with like them together.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense that he would get Rhaegal because it's his dad, and you know, it just it just makes sense. It'll be amazing. And we've already seen how Jon has gotten close to the dragons. Like, he was probably the only person outside of Khaleesi to actually be able to touch.
And Tyrion too.
And Tyrion.
Yeah. So there's
But like,
yeah,
Tyrion
you're
ain't
right.
gonna get a dragon.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. But yeah, you're right. Like Jon, for sure, there's something there. And our number 1 spot is gonna go to R plus L equals J. And if you still don't know what that means, y'all need to Google that shit, because if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you need to know this equation. Like, I hate math, I suck at math, but this is the only equation I have ever cared about. Like, this is the truth. So R plus L equals J stands for Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark equals Jon Snow. And you know, the whole fable or whatever, like the actual like truth of what happens. In the beginning, you start hearing about it like, oh my god, like Rhaegar like, you know, stole Lyanna from Robert Baratheon. He like raped her and like did all this shit to her, like kidnapped her. you know, and then I think through the seasons and the episodes, you start hearing like another version. And I think one of the first times you do hear that other version is actually Littlefinger.
Yes.
Talking to Sansa, and she was like, "Oh, my aunt like got raped by like Rhaegar." He's like, "Really? Like, are you sure about that?" Like, he doesn't flat out say it, but from his face you could tell that like there might be more to this story.
And I mean, like, I don't know how much of a gag it was for a lot of people. Like, I don't know a lot of people who just watched it on a very like high level, because I know that Game of Thrones fans are very, very into it. So I don't know a lot of people who like weren't speculating something by the end, like when it finally gets revealed. But I think that these little tiny nuggets that you notice, you have to like pay attention to all of them. And it was such a satisfying, crazy moment still. Like, it definitely is one of the biggest moments for sure.
And I think if Robert Baratheon maybe had stayed alive longer, you probably would have heard about it more, because he was truly in love with Lyanna. And like, one of his first things was like, I like killed that guy. Like, I wanted to kill him because like he raped my like girl or whatever. So because he died early on too, you kind of, and like Ned died too, like you didn't really hear about Lyanna as much. And it kind of just gets like pushed to the side, really. And I don't think they really wanted to bring it up, because I think they wanted to keep it till the end, and they definitely have done that, like all the way until the last freaking season. Jon still doesn't know who his father is. Like, he thinks it's Ned Stark.
Like,
obviously
they're waiting. Like, Bran is waiting for him to come back to Winterfell so he can tell him. But in the meantime, he done effed his cousin. Like,
he put the
like,
D in the V. No. So yeah, so him and Daenerys have like an instant connection, and like she's so attracted to like his man bun and like his power or whatever. And then like as they're on the boat, like they fuck, obviously. And then I mean, it's not obviously, but like like I
was gonna say, like, it was a pretty big lead up. Like, it was a full season.
Yeah. So anyways, that happens. So it's gonna be, and then it kind of cuts back to like Winterfell, where Sam Tarly, I think, comes back. He's like, yo. He's like, what's going on? He's like, yo, Jon Snow is and then Bran's like, oh shit. He's like, we better tell Jon right away. And I'm like, well, that's too late, because he done fucked his cousin, his aunt. Actually, it's his aunt.
Because I think first Bran thinks that like he's the bastard of them too, so he calls them the Sand. Like, he calls him Jon Sand. But then Sam like ups it one more, and he was like, in these diaries there was a maester who annulled the marriage, so technically he is the rightful heir to the throne. So that changes everything. Like, he's not just a bastard, he technically is the rightful heir because they got married.
Because I think it was in secrecy, obviously, and like some maester just like wrote it down in his like diary, I guess, like one night. He's like, yo, they got married.
Like, dear diary, they got married.
Yeah. And then I think what happens is, you know, right at the end, you do see Bran going back into like that vision at the Tower of Joy, where Ned is with Lyanna. She just gives birth to Jon, and she's like, you need to protect him. Like, they're gonna kill him if they find out who he is. And then he's like, what the heck's, like, poor Ned was like, what the heck's going on? And then she says it, and then like I think you see that in the first few episodes of the season, but you don't hear what she says, like, what's his name. So then she says it, she like whispers it, and she's like, his name is like Aegon Targaryen, whatever. So that's Jon Snow's real name, and then she dies, and he has to protect him. You know, he has to act like Jon's his own kid, like his bastard kid. So so I don't know, what do you think? Like, how do you think he's gonna find out?
I think he's just gonna show up. I mean, it's probably gonna happen in the first episode when they get back to Winterfell, because everybody's already there waiting for him, like Arya, Bran. So I think it's just gonna happen, but it's gonna be interesting to see what he does with that information. Like, I think that whether or not, because Jon Snow, we've known him for 6 seasons as Jon Snow, for him to change his name to Aegon Targaryen, it's gonna be, because I'm not even just saying like name wise, it's also like logistically, it just doesn't, like, I don't know.
I think what's gonna happen is they're gonna tell him. I think he's gonna be so effing shook. I think he's gonna be disgusted. He's gonna be like, oh my god, I just like fucked this girl. She's like my aunt. Like, holy shit. I definitely think she's gonna get pregnant. That's for sure. But I think he's gonna be dealing with that for sure, like emotionally, to be like, what just happened? Who am I? But I also think like the war is coming. Like, there's no time to just sit and be like, oh my god, my whole life is a scam. Like, I feel like
Right.
they're gonna unleash it, and then they're gonna have to deal with like what's to come, you know. So
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a crazy moment for him to realize it, but I definitely want to see what he's going to do with that information, because I think that he doesn't care so much about the politics. He just cares about like killing the White Walkers.
yeah, exactly.
So we'll see what he decides to do by next season.
But yeah, that's it, guys, for our top 10 moments. Game of Thrones history, seasons 1 through 7.
Let us know what you thought about that, and if we missed any, make sure you guys comment below.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.